Welcome to Faces of Change, a conversation with visionaries who are transforming the world. My guest today is a spiritual and astrological counselor, Carol Pilkington. With over 30 years combined training in spirituality, astrological counseling, personal development, and deep transformational work, Carol works with high-achieving entrepreneurs and business owners that are living in a state of anxiety, depression, grief and loss, and feeling isolated. She shows them how to move through and beyond it so that they can live a life with more presence, energy, and joy. She is a multiple best-selling author. She's appeared on radio shows and podcasts and stood on the stages with some of the best-known names. Don't worry, I am introducing her right now so you can meet her. Welcome to the show, Carol.
Thank you so much, Shari. It's so wonderful to be here with you.
I'm so excited to have you here. You know, I'll just throw this little tidbit in because we're going to be talking about astrology today and how we can use that for our own personal growth. And from the time I was a young girl, my mom used to go for astrological readings every week. And so as a young girl, she would take us, my sister and I, and we would sit there in the other room, but during her reading. So it's kind of always been in my world, but I've never fully, dove into it. And so I'm excited for this conversation today.
Wonderful. Me too.
So just curious, how did you get into it? That was my story of finding out about astrology, but can you tell us a little bit about that for you?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was around 22 or so, I had a neighbor friend who wanted to give me an astrology reading for my birthday. And so she took my birth information, although she didn't have my time of birth, which is crucial, actually, what I found out later on, of course. But she gave it to this astrologer who never met me, didn't talk to me at all. And it came back with what I now know as one of these general reports, but it still resonated with me. And I was fascinated with some of the things that did resonate with me, like, how we are described by our birth sign, our sun sign rather, right? And so I kind of put it on the back burner and didn't do anything with it, but I was still fascinated with it. And it wasn't until years later when I met my spiritual teacher and friend, who was a therapist, Jungian therapist, used astrology in his practice and all these other different modalities and systems, that I really understood how astrology could help me answer all the questions that I had been asking that go beyond what we see in our everyday life. Like, who am I? What am I here for? What's my real purpose? And these kinds of questions that traditional means can't answer. They don't have the means to do that.
It's so fascinating to think that, the stars and the planets can actually answer those questions, can help us, as we'll talk about today, with our past, to be able to help us move forward into our future. And it feels like it's this book or this gift that we've been given that has all the answers. I imagine, as with anything that people aren't fully familiar with, that there are things that, people think about it or myths, right, that they come to believe about astrology. Let's just, because for those who are watching, let's just, start with those so we could, change their minds.
That's great. Yeah. There are so many myths about astrology. We have been introduced to astrology more as a predictive tool, like going to a psychic and reading tarot cards and things like that. And those all are wonderful. However, the way I use astrology is to help a person understand who they are beyond their everyday life experiences and events and personality. And one of the myths about astrology is that it's because the planets are doing ... that our life turns out a certain way. Like people talk about Mercury retrograde, right? The big infamous Mercury retrograde. Oh, this is happening because of.
Right,
No. That's a big myth.
That's a myth. So you're about to bust that for me right now. Okay.
Exactly. Okay. It's not because Mercury is retrograde that anything is happening. It is just showing us, revealing it to us that what we have been ignoring, denying, putting off, it's now time to take action on or look at and, take a good examination of something. And so I say it's as above, so below. There's a correspondence to what's happening in the sky as to what is happening here in the physical material world. And so we're just being told, I'm sorry, we're just having something brought to our attention during this particular period of time.
So it sounds like instead of almost like shifting, instead of, blaming, we're like, well, how you're helping people, how they can receive this or use this for their advantage, for their good. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's another myth, that there's no good or bad, right, wrong, positive, negative. We see astrology we see life in those terms, right? Those dualities. Mm-hmm. And so astrology is about understanding the nature of something and not bouncing back and forth between the good, the bad, the positive, the negative, and all these other things.
That's such a healthy way to look at it. I mean, just from without even, let's not leave astrology out of it, but just from the simplicity of there's not right or wrong. It's almost like there's just different or there's ways to navigate that. So I just love that differentiating, that you just share, that differentiating. What other myths? Are there anything else that you want to bust right now for us?
I think there's a myth out there. How people sometimes talk about the fact that they are on the cusp of another sign. Mm-hmm. So that means that they are that other sign, but it's really not, because it's based on time. And whatever time you were born and in a particular sign, like there are 24 hours in a day, there are 30 degrees of a sign, and whatever time you were born, it's based really on that. So if you were born at 11:59 p.m. of one sign, you are that sign. So say the next sign changes at 12 a.m. the next day of another sign. No, you are this one sign. You're not on the cusp of, so you're not teeter-tottering. Am I this? Am I that?
Yeah. And I do hear that all the time, that it's like, I'm a Leo, but I'm right on the cusp of Cancer. And so I have the Cancer characteristics. And you're saying that no, you are who you are in that sun sign. But then depending on the time, then you have like rising or something, right? Okay.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of other calculations and things that go into how a person might feel and have the feelings of the archetypes, I would say, or personality traits and of another sign. And I would say it a little bit differently, that our sun sign is in a particular sign. We are not who we are because of a sign, because of a sun sign. There's a lot of languaging that has to be understood. And so it's really important, because we are not stuck just being one thing. We are not limited only by the sun sign. In fact, here's another myth, that we are actually more than the sun sign. We are everything that is a composite of the chart itself. And we operate more from the moon initially than we do to the sun. From the sun. A lot of times the sun is obscured by all these other things that are going on in the chart.
That's so interesting too. Like I always relate, I'm not going to lie, like personally to my sun sign. However, I can see, because it sounds like you're saying we're almost all of them in some way. And so
Absolutely.
that's why people, I feel like when they're like, well, you could fit into any astrological sign. And what you're saying is like, yes, you can, but there's more than just that, right?
That's right. Everybody has all the signs and all the planets in their chart. And some things, depending upon, um, you know, how they're situated in the chart and what connections are being made from one planet to another or planets, can change a lot of things.
So incredible. I'm so intrigued by this because I literally I went, like I said, with my mom growing up to do that. And then I was really into it in high school. We would go to the bookstore and go to astrology and look up our sun signs and are we compatible together and all of that. And we'd spend hours in there. But then I didn't, like I say, really go full on into it. But I absolutely see the value. And what I love with the work that you're doing is that it's more than just that. You talk about this transpersonal astrology and what that is.
First, I want to explain what trans means. Trans is beyond, right? It means to go beyond. And so when we speak about transpersonal, it's beyond the personal, it's beyond the personality, it's beyond everyday life experiences and things like that. So what is our purpose? This is why I got into this type of astrology, because it helps one to understand what their drives and motivations are at a deeper level than just what we see on the surface, our personalities and belief systems. It gives us the ability to really grow and evolve beyond who we think we are, and help us understand what that real purpose is, because each one of us is a whole within a whole within a whole. And if you can expand that out, and not to get woo-woo or anything, but if anybody is interested in astrology, they have some kind of resonance with the fact that there's something bigger out there, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're a part of something bigger. And what is that? And how am I part of that? What is my responsibility and contribution to that? And so that's where transpersonal astrology comes in. When we can see that we have a deeper purpose and calling that goes beyond what we do in the world, our jobs and careers and so forth, our roles that we play, it can give life so much deeper meaning and purpose and joy, because we're contributing to humanity, to the universe, and how we are all evolving collectively.
It's amazing as you say that, this deeper purpose and understanding our connection. My first thought is, wouldn't everybody want to know that? And so, I mean, that fascinates me as well. So you're saying, and I'm just going to be cliche here, but it's all written in the stars.
And that's another thing. It's not that things are fated.
Mm-hmm.
The more we understand about ourselves, the higher we raise our consciousness and self-awareness, the more free will we actually have, because it's another thing about transpersonal astrology that deals with free will. I mean, this is a big, big, big conversation, right? The nature of fate versus free will.
Yeah.
And so while the chart is a blueprint or map of our potentialities and possibilities, nothing is set in stone.
That's great. And I love those words, potentiality and possibilities, because that kind of encompasses that all. And it's a guide, it's a map, but you can almost shift it and create what you want. So powerful. You talk a lot about unresolved past issues. We all have them. I like to think, I've done with them, but I am a human, or so we think we are. But you say that there are specific patterns that we can actually find or look for to, is it that to indicate that people have unresolved past issues? Like, does that actually show up in people's charts?
Well, yeah, our life is a reflection of how we're living our chart. And so there are certain things within the chart that can help us understand the cycles that we're in, the lessons that we're here to learn. The chart is broken up into 12 segments, and each one of those segments represents areas of our life that we are focused on, and wherever there are planets in those segments reveals the lessons that we're here to focus on. So, for instance, there's a house of money, hidden talents, and value systems. It can represent how we're going to learn our lessons within that area of life. And most people that come to an astrologer, it's not just out of curiosity, but they're wanting answers, right? They're wanting clarity. They're wanting to be affirmed of what they already think they suspect is true, but they want to validate it. And so that's what most people come to astrologers for. And oftentimes they're in crisis of some kind or another, relationship. They could be having health challenges. It's not going to say what you need to do, or an astrologer shouldn't be saying what you should or shouldn't be doing. But here are some things that are going on of how you can approach it. It's about how we approach life, right? Not what we should or shouldn't be doing. It's really critical for an astrologer to be so very ethical and not project their own belief systems to another, onto the client.
That is so important that you say that, because it feels like that's in any coaching, right? Therapy, counseling, that it really is about the person. And I love that you clarify that, because that makes such a difference in that you are present about that in your counseling work with the astrology. So what I hear you're saying is that there are definitely patterns within, when you look at these segments, that can not predict, because we're not, I don't know
Yeah.
Fix me here.
So everybody's life is unique unto themselves. And so when a person comes to me and we're having a discussion and they're revealing to me what's going on, I can see it in the chart. I can see how they're talking and what they're saying, and it is being revealed to me in the chart. And so there are certain planets and aspects that show me what they're dealing with. And so I can speak to that. Is that clear?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Okay. So does that, because I'm so curious, I'm just a curious person. So with that, then would you be able to see that if they didn't tell you that? Would you be able to actually see that though in the charts and then share that with them, and it would be true, if that makes sense? Yeah.
Here's the thing, that we breathe life into the chart.
Got it.
And so there are no absolutes of, what is going on in the chart. Without the person, it means nothing.
Got it.
Because there are so many things that the planets and the aspects could mean, but without the person there to breathe life into it, it's just a bunch of symbols and lines and stuff.
Yes, it's like a coloring book or a try like graphs and try. Yeah, got it. So how do you currently use, like, what's happening with the planets, with the transits of to identify, I guess you would say opportunities, right? Not blame, but opportunities for people to break some of their patterns, the things that they're coming to you for, these crises?
Yes. So Saturn, just to give kind of an inkling of what I'm talking about, Saturn is the planet of mastery, taking responsibility. And it is over a span of time can be a barometer of how we're approaching living and learning lessons or not in our life. And it can be a 28 to 30 year span broken up into 7-year cycles. I call them cycles within cycles within cycles. And then there are whole cycles. Each one is a whole unto itself. And so, like, say, somebody at the age of 28 or 29, a lot happens to an individual at that age, no matter who you speak to. Mm-hmm. It's a benchmark for an individual becoming their own person and how they are approaching that benchmark without even having astrology involved.
Wow. You'll
hear people say, I started a family, I got married during that particular period of time. It's a barometer of how a person is breaking away from the familial construct, the family construct, and striking out on their own. And then, so that's one instance. How are they dealing with that? Is it a crisis for them? Are they going through it smoothly? All kinds of things like that. So that's just an example of how I can see what's happening for a person at these different benchmarks of their life.
So by being able to see that, then they're able to move past it or move through it.
Yeah, move through it with a little bit more understanding of how and what is happening and how they can see things from a different lens.
And that's so important in the work that you're doing, is just bringing awareness to people, because in that awareness, of course, as we know, there's so much power. So being able, it's almost, I always reference it, like if you go to a doctor, it'll go, but like when you find out what's actually happening, there's somehow you just feel like you can navigate this better, or you feel better because there is a reason or, a plan for something.
Exactly.
And that's you're empowering people here.
That's exactly right. It is giving them the power and the tools to take the action that they feel is best for them. It's not about me telling them what's best. It's just giving them options and seeing and widening the aperture lens, if you will, of a camera. Because sometimes we see things so narrowly that when we step back and we can see a broader picture, it can really help us make better decisions when we understand things better and see things more clearly.
100%. We all need that external lens or that wider from somebody else to be able to allow us to see even clearer and different. So good. So you're obviously doing a lot of work with people to be able to help widen their lens and empower them. Can you share with me, because again, I'm nosy, can you share with me a successful case, a client, or, where the work that you do guiding them and astrology helped them to understand their past patterns?
Absolutely. I had a client come to me a while back. She was in therapy and she needed something more. She didn't know what, but she was wanting to have an astrology consultation and she was in a desperate place. And so when we sat down and talked and she talked to me and I saw what was going on in the chart, she actually was going through what we call her first Saturn return, that 28 to 30 year mark. And she was in crisis. And having that one consultation, it soothed her, it calmed her down, it gave her some insights about what was going on for her in her life. And as a result, we started working from that point for the next 4 to 5 years on a spiritual counseling basis. And the change and shift in her has been amazing to see how much she has grown from this crisis point in her life to understanding herself better, understanding how to operate in life better, in relationships better, seeing her own fears, and then being able to have compassion and love within herself, and doing that to be able to see others more clearly, because it's not just about us, right? It's about how we be in the world better.
It sounds like you're giving people, I want to say, like the winning lottery ticket to life. Like that's
I
what
love that.
That's what it feels like to me, though, because you're like talking about all the things that they get through this, being able to recognize themselves, to empower themselves, to, break patterns, to love themselves. Like you can't get better than that when it comes to that. So it's amazing that you offer this to people and that you're changing their lives. If someone booked a session or time with you, what does this look like as far as like, how do you support them? What is it? Is it ongoing? Is it a one-time thing? How do you help people through this, their insights and personal growth?
Yeah, it can be a one-time thing, depending upon what they're looking for, or it can be an ongoing thing. I've had most of my clients come from astrology, first-time astrology consultations, and then they come back to me and want to continue working with me. And we are constantly interspersing the language of the chart and what is happening in different increments, so that I can speak to them in a more of a metaphoric way of how to see what's going on in their lives. And it broadens the vista, if you will, of opportunities, understandings, because language is very, very limiting. Our English language is very limiting. It's functional. But when we bring astrology into it, everything opens up and like a blossoming flower of metaphors. And we're able to visualize better and differently the scope of our lives.
I loved everything you just said. Every time you're like blooming and flowering and this, I'm like, like I'm ready for our session. Okay. Carol, talk to me about how, because you come from, multiple backgrounds. Again, you've worked in the spirituality and astrology, personal development, you come from corporate. Talk to me about how all of this, your life's work or the tools that you've learned all really come in to help support your clients with this.
I have been so very fortunate. The first 30 years of my life, I was in the corporate world, living a very linear existence, using my brain to calculate and think logically. And it was so unsatisfying. And yet, as I look back on it, I needed those skills. I needed those lessons that I was getting in that corporate world to be able to function as a business owner, as someone that can create something, because I was in project management in telecommunications, and everything has its flow, everything has its cycle. So all these things that I'm talking about are useful in understanding how to run a business and how to work with people in general. And then my own journey, my own transformational journey has been over a span of 30 plus years, 40 years. And my own experience also comes into this. And so it's just a wonderful mosaic of life. You know what I mean?
Of course I do. No, and I brought that up specifically because you come with so much. It feels like the full package. Even as you talked about project management and telecommunications, I'm like, this is how I see you even using to be able to, manage their charts or organize it and communicate all of this and in such a, in such a compassionate, loving way. And it's so obvious that you love what you do, your passion around it. If someone wants to work with you, how can they?
Oh, yes, they can get in touch with me through my website, and they can schedule a time there, or my Calendly link as well. I also have a quiz that they can take that can help them understand themselves a little bit better and where they are in their journey. And it's a 4-minute quiz, soul-filled living quiz, and they get the results right in their inbox immediately. And
Amazing.
from there, they can have a discovery call with me or a chat with me, 30-minute chat.
Great. Everyone loves quizzes, especially about themselves. So I think that's a great thing. So definitely make sure that you take that quiz and connect with Carol. One last question for you, Carol. What is your personal hope moving forward? Or, what is it that you want to see in the world?
Oh, my goodness. That's going to make me cry. Oh, my goodness. I want people to not feel afraid to come forward and get help, because we have been so stigmatized to believe that we have to do everything ourselves and pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. To some degree, that's true, but we all need help in this life. And there's no shame in that. It's not weakness. It's a necessity. We need one another. We depend on one another. There's an interdependence that we have with each other that's unspoken, but is real. And so I just want people to know that I wouldn't be doing this work if on the other side of it, I wasn't going to change or I wasn't going to feel better. I'm living proof of it. You're living proof of it, that life does change for the better when we take that first initial step to get guidance and assistance.
I love that, Carol. You could feel that from you. And so for anyone that's watching, don't be afraid to reach out to someone, specifically Carol, who will help you bloom and blossom. Thank you so much, Carol, for being a face of change.
Oh, thank you so much. It's just a pleasure.